Good afternoon. My name is Joshua Sharf, and I am representing myself. First of all, I wanted to thank Representative Court. According to her comments for the last bill, mine is one of the most important voices you'll be hearing today on this.
As one of my constituents, always.
And and so we look forward next year to hearing you as being one of the most important voices on any bill. I'm also glad to hear, of course, the Representative Court wants to help fund my campaign, but I'm going to have to graciously turn down her offer. I think that the bill itself fails on philosophical grounds, which I think have been at least a little bit discussed, whether or not it's appropriate to have have public funding of campaigns or whether that really should come from the citizenry directly. Limitations on speech as opposed to greater political speech, but also at a practical level and at a fiscal level. Now, one of the fiscal elements, of course, has already been noted. We're cutting money for schools at the same time that we're going to be appropriating more money for politicians. In fact, not everything here is necessarily voluntary. Item number 2 talks about money is appropriated from the general fund. In addition, there is a provision for gifts and grants, which means that a given large donor, for instance, could fund most, if not all, of the operational expenses for a given year. The total number, given the total number of seats and the maximum amount that could be drawn out by candidates, plus what is uncertain, at least according to the fiscal note, ongoing operational expenses. It says 0.0 full-time employees, but it's clear that there are going to be some administrative expenses over the course of a year of a campaign cycle. Then that comes to about $1 million. If everyone who was up for election in a given year took their maximum amount, then it would come to about $1 million plus whatever operational expense. So that's clearly within the means of some people who contribute that much money to 527s and outside groups now on a regular basis. So the presence or absence of money in the fund itself is not a particularly good proxy for the interest of Coloradans in this fund. The funding by checkoff also, I think the appropriate, I know that there's obviously in the fiscal note there's a list of what the various funds are and how much they receive, and based on that, the Legislative Council estimated how much they might expect to see coming in a given year. I'm not sure that's really the correct, not to impugn the work of Legislative Council, I'm not sure that that's the correct comparison. I think a better comparison would be the effectiveness of the federal checkoff, which has been relatively ineffective, rather than the comparison with other state checkoffs. It's clear to see that campaign financing doesn't tug at the heartstrings the way that the Pet Overpopulation Fund does. And I say that as the owner of 2 dogs, so I'm not going to minimize or ridicule the Pet Overpopulation Fund. It just doesn't have that same emotional pull. I also think that there are conflicting provisions for what happens if there's not enough money in a given year to fund all of the candidates who want to take advantage. There's a minimum of $75,000, but that would only fund 7 House races on both sides. It will only fund a couple of Senate races on both sides. If there's not enough money, it has to be, the first provision says that the Secretary of State has to come up with a method of expeditiously distributing the money. But then the second provision says that by the time there's not enough money by some point there's not enough money to satisfy everyone, it's apportioned proportionally to how much money you've raised, to how much qualifying money you have raised. The problem with that is, of course, it rewards the people who are able to get there faster, and that is going to be is not going to result in more competitive races. It's going to result in a preference for incumbents and for people who already have existing political machines. The underlying assumptions of the bill are equally flawed. Campaigns are not expensive because there's money coming into them. Campaigns are expensive because they have to pay the freight on postage and media and on printing. And those things are driven by much, much larger markets than political campaigns. I mean, we like to think, when we're running for office, we're bringing all this business to our local printer, but it's really a fraction of the business that they do over the course of 2 years. It has to pay market rates for a market in which it frankly has no real purchasing leverage. That's why campaigns are expensive. The cost of campaigns has not gone down despite Amendment 27, which is not indexed for inflation. If raising money is turning out to be too large a burden, then there actually is a Supreme Court ruling that could be attested to now, or that could be used to perhaps relieve some of that burden. You know, the courts up until recently have been very reluctant to strike down contribution limits. However, they did so recently in, of course, Randall versus Sorrell, which struck down Vermont's contribution limits as being too restrictive. If what we're seeking is some sort of relief from the burden of having to go and fill up a bucket with a teaspoon, then that would be an appropriate case to look at. In fact, Vermont's restrictions were perceived to be more restrictive than Colorado, but may not actually have been. Theirs were $200 per candidate over the course of a cycle, but their House districts only cover about 4,000 citizens. Ours, as has been pointed out, cover currently about 65,000 according to the 65,000 according to the last census, and that number will jump up to about 74,000 in the next census. In fact, what we've seen with campaign restrictions, campaign finance limits, is not the reduction of the cost of campaigns. It's the increase in the outside expenditures, which are unaccountable and which are not made transparent. Part of the response to the recent Citizens United case has been to look here in the state, that is the Supreme Court saying that in fact yes, the First Amendment does apply here in Colorado, and Citizens United strikes down certain portions of Amendment 27, has been to look for ways of increasing transparency, and I really think that's the right direction to go, not greater limits. There obviously is some concern about the appearance of corruption when putting a lot of money into campaigns. I think this is often a case, especially with some of the groups that harp on this, of, well, if what you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. I just don't think it necessarily seems that way to people outside. California killed public financing in a public referendum by 3-1. Alaska killed it recently in a vote by 2-1. That is, refused to institute a system. The cleanest states, according to the Department of Justice, metrics measured by the Department of Justice, such as Nebraska, have virtually no campaign limits. The best-run states, according to Governing Magazine, Virginia and Utah, have few or no limits on campaign funding. So this is as much a matter of perception that I think is used by some groups rather than actually being real. And then in terms of encouraging participation in the elective process, I think the last two election cycles, last one and this one, have shown that there are factors in terms of governance that do far more to increase voter enthusiasm than public financing of campaigns. When these have been tried in other states, they have not produced the results. Again, in the legislative declaration, one of the goals is to increase the supply of candidates. And yet in Arizona, where this was tried, the number of women in the legislature did not increase. The number of people from non-legal backgrounds did not increase. There's been no greater diversity either in race or in gender or in professional background. Wisconsin and, of course, New Jersey tried an experiment in this. All the incumbents were reelected by larger margins than before the law was struck down by the courts. In Wisconsin, the system has fallen into disuse. So this is not an experiment that's worked elsewhere. I would request, therefore, that the committee vote against this bill and instead consider measures that would decrease restrictions on public speech and increase transparency on who's funding it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other questions from the lunch crowd? We apologize, but many of us go from one committee right to the next. So, committee, I applaud you for taking good care of yourself here. But are there other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming forward.